Robert Browning, the one who wanted to be Shelley. Browning is devout. Browning invents the dramatic monologue form. His first collection is called Madhouse Cells. He adopts the persona, and persona means mask, of very extreme people, very extreme points of view. Browning also researches history. He loves reading history because in history, as compared to his own time, his own society, he can find very colorful nuts, very, very vibrant, very exciting, nonconformist characters whom he can inhabit, whose point of view he can inhabit. I sent you Fra Lippo Lippi. I hope you read it. Now, why did I choose that of all his great dramatic monologues, including some considerably shorter ones? Because it's cheerful. Early on, before he ever went there, Browning really liked Italy. It was various things England was not. It was warm. It had lots of sunlight, good wine, good food. People who wept easily. People who wore their hearts on their sleeve. People who showed their emotions. This attracted him. Finally, he rescues Elizabeth Barrett from her father's house, and they run off together to Italy. He spends many years there. And he loves the Renaissance. There's another reason he loves the Renaissance. The Renaissance was the beginning. The Renaissance was an upswing. And Browning is really haunted by the idea that he is living in a downswing. Despite empire, despite factories, despite steam, despite scientific research, he thinks something's dying. He's very afraid of that. So he imagines passion. He imagines optimism, at least in art. And Fra Lippo Lippi is nothing but an optimist as far as his own talents are concerned. And notice, a rebel. He's a monk. They make him a monk when he's 8 years old. And he says, yeah, you take an 8-year-old and you expect him never to grow up to kiss the girls? I mean, come on, sneak out and get drunk now and then. But he can get away with it because he makes friends with power, namely Cosimo de' Medici, who lives down the street and who really appreciates his painting. I hope you read that. It's a very upbeat poem. And then you should read Andrea del Sarto. I recommended several other dramatic monologues, which is about a very different painter, and it's not upbeat. Yeah?
I find this poetry very hard to read, because unless you know who Fra Lippo Lippi is and Andrea del Sarto, you don't know what's going on.
In the age of Google and Wikipedia, it's very easy to find out who something is.
Yes, but we started reading poetry in 10th grade, and I did not know what they were talking about.
Okay, but now you have access to.
I'm an art historian. I know who they are, but are you going to spend the time looking up all these people? Did you like reading this stuff?
Well, there are also okay. There's nothing I can say to that.
Because you have to be well educated to understand what they're saying.
No. You just have to find an edition with footnotes and annotations.
I don't know.
You just have to find an edition with notes. It just takes a second. Well, what can I tell you? You make a little bit of effort and there's an enormous intellectual and emotional payoff. If you don't want to make that effort, if you feel, okay, this is saying that I'm inferior just because I don't already know it, that's your choice. But you're losing something. It's not trying to make you feel inferior. It's not trying to, yeah.
Well, to me, it's like a rich dessert. You do want to spend time eating it. You don't want to eat too much of it, but you can enjoy it. If you start to eat too much of it, if you try to read these full assignments, put on weight.
All right. Fair enough. Fair enough. One thing about the Victorians that I will certainly admit is that they tend to go on.
Yeah.
Swinburne goes on and on and on. One thing I must mention, we're in the 19th century, and for the first time, we can mention Americans. Yeah.
Before you go there, could you tell us just a bit about Elizabeth Barrett Browning's poetry?
Like many people, her husband included, but she much more so, she was very, very involved in the Risorgimento, which was the attempt on the part of Italians to get free of the Austrian yoke. Austria controlled, owned much of Italy at this time. And at the same time to unify. Italy, since the fall of Rome, had been divided into many little kingdoms. Some were still Bourbon kingdoms. All of central Italy was the papal states that belonged to the Pope. So its progress is very much impeded by this fact. And starting in the 1860s, several theorists and statesmen, Cavour and Mazzini, and a revolutionary hero named Garibaldi. She was, even when she was a perennial invalid in her father's house in England, she was very, very engaged with the cause of Italian independence and unification. Liberal Brits, progressive Brits, were involved successively throughout the 19th century with many movements like this. Successive Polish revolts against Russia. Earlier on, the revolt of Greece against the Ottomans. But Italians were an object of special fondness. There's a poem of Elizabeth Barrett called The Cry of the Children. Used to be famous, was read in this country as an attack on slavery. Well, she wasn't talking about slavery. She was talking about the poor orphans of Italy, subject to Austrian oppression. But the style was so flowery and emotional that it was easy to make the leap. Okay. Look at the poem that I sent you, A Toccata of Galuppi's. Well, I sent you the two toccatas. I emailed them to you so you could hear the kind of music he was talking about. All it takes is a little bit of work and some imagination. Okay, notice what happens in it.